I'm down to dunk.
And I'm down to dunk.
I'm down to dunk.
This is J-Dub, and I'm down to dunk.
I'm Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, and I'm down to dunk.
This is Lindy Waters, and I'm down to dunk.
I'm Mike Muscala, and I'm down to dunk.
This is Jay Will, and I'm down to dunk.
This is Kenneth Williams, and I'm down to dunk.
This is Lou Dort, and I'm down to dunk.
We say this is Lou Dort, and I'm down to Dort.
This is Lou Dort, and I'm down to Dort.
Cracklin Oat Brand?
Have you had Cracklin Oat Bran?
No,
No. Okay.
but it's healthy.
Are you a big oat brand guy?
I'm a big Oat Bran guy.
Okay.
I think I would switch it with Fruity Pebbles.
Okay, eat faster. Don't put as much in the bowl.
Do you have a gallon of milk I can also take home? You don't have milk at home?
One cinnamon toast.
Okay.
Crunch.
Yeah. Cereal is great. Yeah. Welcome to Down to Dunk. I'm your host, Andrew Schlecht. We're part of the Athletic Podcast Network. Special podcast today. My guy, Nate Ruess from Fun and the Format and his own music. Nate, thanks so much for joining the show, man.
Thank you, Andrew, for having me. This is very exciting for me.
Well, listen, I remodeled the house. It was years ago, and I listened to Aim and Ignite just over and over again as I'm like caulking and painting this house. Like I just listened to it on repeat. And so like this is an absolute thrill for me too. Like that album, like to this day, it holds up. It's so good. So I'm thankful that you joined us today.
Thank you. Did you did you do those cabinets to Aim and Ignite?
I did.
They look great. I've actually noticed that before. I was like, those are good looking cabinets.
Yeah. So this house we moved into during the pandemic, and yeah, this room was like one of the reasons why we moved into this house, and like we redid all these cabinets and everything in here. So yeah.
It looks great. I've always thought, like anytime I've seen footage or anything, I'd be like, it's a nice looking room. That's a good paint color.
It's all my wife. My wife is really good at all that stuff. I'm afraid of what it would look like had she not helped me.
Yeah, but I mean, at least you're doing like the caulking.
Yes, I'll do the work. Yeah, I'll do the work. She just tells me she has a vision. She has vision for everything, and then she'll tell me what to do. And I'll say that sounds good.
That's pretty rad. We don't have that. My wife and I both are more on the like design side, and like my dad is a carpenter. And,
oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm sitting in my like studio right now, and it's in our basement, and he basically just like built it essentially.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, but and I like thought I helped him, but I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Like I just bossed him around. Didn't pay him.
Oh man.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't need to pay him, but
right.
I'm not going to pay him.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's when someone mentions that they did some stuff around the house to like my music, I always, to me, that's like the biggest insult.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, well, but it's usually like cleaning the house, Like,
sure,
it's not like an insult because some of my favorite albums are my favorite albums to clean the house to.
Yeah.
But they're boring.
Yeah. Like, okay, well, give me an example.
There's this artist from when I was a kid, Matt Pond, PA. And it's like drinking water. It's so boring. But I love to listen to it when I'm doing stuff around the house.
I feel the opposite. Like I feel like I need something to juice me up whenever I'm like doing work like that.
Well, you're doing real labor.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Yeah,
I'm just like picking stuff up and moving it around. Like huge difference.
Yeah. Well, obviously your music has been impactful to me, even back to I listened to the Format whenever I was in college as well. So this is just really cool. All my friends, I told my friends that you were coming on the show, and they're like,
Yeah.
"What? Like, are you kidding me?"
Like, he's washed. What's he doing?
No.
I'm retired.
So what are you up to right now?
I'm retired.
Okay.
I'm working on a Broadway musical.
Oh,
That's what I tell people that I do, even though
Okay.
it's been a few years in the making.
Yeah.
And it's just a good way to get people off my back.
Yeah. Sure.
And then occasionally I'll write songs for people.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I want to say I put in the work from like 20 to 35
Yeah.
every day, and then I have kids now, and that's much more enjoyable for me.
Yeah.
So
And now you're watching Thunder basketball.
I watch Thunder basketball. The kids watch Thunder basketball. We love Thunder basketball. My kids have SGA jerseys.
Oh, sick. Okay.
If I'm down here, I usually watch games, at night after dinner, and then they'll come down and I'll be like, "Who's that?" And it's like Lou Dort. They know all the players. My 3-year-old daughter knows every player.
That is awesome. So I need you to tell the people how you became a Thunder fan. I think this story is very interesting.
Well, I'm from Phoenix, so I grew up as a Suns fan, which was awesome because those were the Barkley days.
Oh, yeah.
And then it was going into the Nash days, and I think I was just starting to maybe tour around at the time when Nash was there, and it was the height of the team. That whole 7 seconds era, like the beginning, essentially, like the first season. I want to say they played 2 seasons with Joe Johnson. Anyway, so Sarver bought the team.
Yeah.
And it already felt pretty suspect. I was like, this guy seems awful. Like he was like a budget Mark Cuban in that he would like try and sit at the front row of every game, and he would stand up and try and get the fans to move and stuff. And I mean, hindsight's 2020, but at the time it was like, oh, Colangelo is like way better.
Yeah.
And then I guess Colangelo is a good basketball person.
Yeah, because he like got out of that to help with Team USA and all that stuff. Yeah, and
he did a great job with Team USA, and then did a horrible job putting his son in charge of the Sixers.
Right, exactly.
but I will say, so I was already suspect about Sarver, and then he let Joe Johnson walk, and I thought that was the craziest thing I've ever seen. I thought that was a very brazen move, because Joe was my favorite player on that team.
Oh man, yeah.
And he dunked, and somehow someone I think came up from behind him. He fell on his face and basically broke his face for the remainder of the playoffs that year, and I think that really hurt them. And then they went into the offseason and let him walk. But they traded for Boris Diaw, who was then became like my absolute favorite.
Yeah.
But through like they would weirdly, Brian Colangelo would keep masking like what Sarver was doing awfully as an owner. And then Sarver fired Brian Colangelo. And I was just like, okay, like what is going on here? This is awful. And I grew up in Phoenix, so like being a Cardinals fan, like I saw what a bad owner can do to a team.
Yep.
And so I was like, you know what? Like I'm out.
Yeah. And then like selling their draft picks for just nothing.
Oh yeah. What who did they give? Oh, Rajon Rondo. They
gave away Rondo. They gave away a pick that could have been either like Andre Iguodala or Luol Deng or somebody like high in that class. They basically just like sold that pick, which is just unheard of. Like, just imagine somebody. It'd be like the Thunder selling the 11th pick or the 12th pick in the draft to somebody.
I think nowadays it's different. Like draft picks are worth weirdly so much more now. Well, I mean, and even though I feel like Presti's has kind of it's going to just like it's like anything, everything circles back around. So I feel like it's going to cheapen the picks, especially after what we saw this summer. It was just like crazy, all the first round picks that were like just going back and forth. And so I'm sure that in 10 years when I do like a podcast for another up and coming team that I'm rooting for, I'm sure we'll talk about how Presti gave away, these picks for Usman or something like that. But yeah, so I was over it. I didn't want to be a fan of like that team. And so I started rooting for the Toronto Raptors
Okay.
when they drafted Bargnani.
Oh man.
And I was a Bargnani like apologist for the first couple of years.
Yeah.
And then it was like,
so
this guy's awful, like truly awful. Like I would just watch and be like, oh, he didn't like he couldn't have grabbed that rebound anyway. Like balls would literally just like come his way and he would actively like avoid rebounds. It was crazy how bad he was.
Yeah.
And I stuck through that.
Is that 06? Is that right? 2006?
That was 06, yeah.
Okay.
Oh god, it was it might have been 08. No, I think it was 06.
06 was that draft. I'm pretty sure that's the Bargnani draft where he went number 1. Yeah.
Aldridge and Rudy Gay.
Yes. Yes.
I'm trying to think of who else was in that draft, but I think it was a really weak draft in hindsight.
Yes.
So I was a Raptors fan, and then they started getting good. And I had moved to New York and was living in New York kind of full time at that point, and so I started going to a lot of Knicks games. And so I wouldn't say I was a Knicks fan by any stretch of the imagination, but I was just watching a lot more games. I used to, when I did live in New York, I used to like drive up to Toronto to see games and stuff like that. But as soon as they started getting good, that's usually when I like jump ship.
Yeah.
That's
okay,
just like,
explain this to me. Explain like your thought process in that.
That's just a story of my life. I mean, anytime like it's just same thing, like releasing an album and winning like Grammys and stuff, and then just being like, nah, okay, that's good. Like, to me, getting there is so much more exciting than being there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I never imagined personally, like with the accomplishments that I had done, that I was ever going to get there. So I like, when I got there, I got there and I was like, this is not my place. And so I was like, well, that makes it even better for me to like cut and run. And that's kind of how I felt about being a Raptors fan. Like I gave up like 2 years before they got Kawhi, something like that.
Okay.
Just because I was like, okay, like my job here is done. I was here from Bargnani and I made it up to, Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan, like playing at like a very high level.
Yeah.
And like, I was like, okay, now it's time to just move on and go to Knicks games and watch the Knicks lose. And but it's like a team that you don't want to necessarily become a fan of.
You can't attach yourself to, because there's not like the hope in front of you with the Knicks, like in a realistic way.
Talk about self-sabotage. If you like no one does it better than they do. If I'm talking about self-sabotage, like they are the greatest self-sabotagers of all time.
Yeah. Oh, without a doubt. It's constant. Yeah. They're dealing for the veterans that are at like the end of their prime and they have maybe 6 months left and then it's over.
Well, what was it 3 years ago when they did the Julius Randle, Bobby Portis, and Taj Gibson? Like that was going to be their front court.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess Randle panned out, which is strange.
Randle's all right, man. He's been all right this year. He's been good this year. He I saw him here in OKC. I have not seen a guy look more disinterested in playing than him this year, but he's still super good.
What was that early on in this? Because early on, it seemed like I try to actively avoid Knicks games.
Yeah, it was really
even on like my fantasy teams. I won't put a Knicks player on my teams. But I think he was taking a lot from the fans too early on. But now I guess they're doing okay, which means that something inevitably is going to get messed up.
Sure.
I mean, it's so funny to think that, but and for you, it's interesting as like a media person, to see what the Knicks media, that New York media does to the players. It's intense. Like how they can turn. I mean, there's not that the Dolan administration doesn't deserve it, but there is like a part of the press that is just like actively trying to like sabotage the Knicks as well.
I've learned it's like a battle between the team and the media. And so like you're either like my buddy Fred Katz covers the Knicks. And so like Fred and I talk all the time. And Fred's not one that's going to just throw guys under the bus, but there are guys that will do that. And I would not be surprised if it was just because of the way the media gets treated by the organization.
Oh, I think so. Who's the guy? there's that one big guy that they won't even let in the building anymore. I think he writes for the Post.
Well, Berman, it used to be Mark Berman. He retired, but yeah, like Berman was classic. Like just if you want to, he's like a caricature of a Knicks beat writer.
Right. You're right. But the issue with that is that that it's like they go at the players, and I don't necessarily think the players deserve that.
Yeah.
The level of scrutiny that the press gives them. Like
Sure.
attack the organization all you want, but
Yeah.
like I think that the players, like, what can they possibly do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But those Knicks fans are crazy.
Yeah.
So I then got into fantasy basketball.
Yeah.
Weirdly, and I joined this weird league of guys. Some worked for the Mavericks organization, a bunch of guys in Dallas, and it's this dynasty league that has been going on for like 10 plus years.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And it's pretty intense. And I had a friend like kind of grandfather me in, and I inherited the worst team ever. Awful. It was like my best player was like Kelly Oubre.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
How is this even possible?
I don't know. This was the Chris Paul year. This was, I can see why the guy left the league, but then it's like, hey, we need you to pony up $50 for quite possibly the worst fantasy team possible. It was Kelly Oubre. Oh God. Valanciunas, who wasn't that bad, but those are my trade chips. And Blake Griffin coming off of like,
oh shoot. Yeah.
I don't know how many games he played the season before, probably like 3 games the season before. So I didn't even know how to play. I traded away all my draft picks. Like, this is my first year doing fantasy. Anyways, as J-Dub once said the other day, like, I still don't care about your fantasy team.
Yeah.
So I'll get to the point. That was, by the way, probably one of the greatest tweets I've ever read.
It's so good. Yeah. He's amazing. Like, he is such a cool person.
He seems like it.
I'm so glad he's on the team. I've gotten a chance to interview him one-on-one a couple of times, and he's just a delight. He's just a really, really cool guy.
Well, and I think, like having the small market and then having guys who have, I don't like a small market personality.
Yeah.
Which is, to me, is like a great thing.
It is like being down to earth, just being a normal person. Like, just like you can connect with almost anybody kind of thing.
Yeah. He seems like that type of guy who, you can only remember, like, if you're living in I've been to OKC, so many times in my life, and it still feels like a city that's a small town.
Mm-hmm.
And so to have someone that's like personable like that is probably I'm sure it's great for you guys, anybody covering the team.
Yeah.
Especially after Russ.
Yeah. It's a breath of fresh air, honestly.
And by the way, like, no offense, I hate the press and I hate interviews and stuff like that. And like, I understand I totally understand where Russ is coming from, but also
definitely.
Yeah. Also, it doesn't do you any favors to then like dig into it. I feel like the way that those guys did.
Yeah. I can't fault him for feeling the way that he felt. Especially, I could never put myself in his shoes on like what people are always wanting something from him. And he's always, and to me, he just has this attitude that got him to where he is. And he just can't turn it off.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can't blame him for being who he is. And like, I don't know, if he were anything else, he'd be being fake. So it's just like, okay, this is just who Russ is. Like, that's Westbrook.
Yeah. My best friend in town, I moved to Santa Barbara like 3 years ago, right before the pandemic. And my best friend in town was his trainer for those early, like,
interesting,
when he started getting great. And he was just like, and he's trained, everybody, Verlander, all these different guys, these super high level guys. And he's like, I've never had anyone as intense as Russ. If it's over, he's good. But while he's in it, like, and if another player would come or whatever, like, he would expect them to like be as intense as him
Oh yeah.
about getting it done and working out. And that's a personality trait.
Yeah. It's a personality trait.
Like that's the only way I can describe it. That's a personality trait.
Yep. Totally.
But anyway, so speaking of Russ, they had just traded Russ.
Yeah.
I remember I was out with my friend who grandfathered me into the league. I happened to have had like a private show in Florida, and he was in town, and he was like, "Oh, you got to join the league." And I remember getting up from dinner and looking at my phone and seeing that Russ had just been traded.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, Chris Paul's washed.
Yeah.
But there's all these draft picks, all that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's time for our fantasy draft. And obviously Chris Paul's washed. And so he was the only player that was available in this dynasty league, like overpriced. I think he was making like 40 something million, or what was it? high 30s, I think, a few years ago.
Yeah.
And he was the only decent player that was available in this draft, where I traded all my first round picks. So I only had like a second round pick. All the good rookies were gone, but I think, there were no good rookies that year. Is the Rui Hachimura year.
Oh boy. Yeah. Draft.
Yeah. Awful draft. So I grabbed, oh wait, no, maybe that was a Zion draft. So not an awful draft, but
it got bad quick.
Oh yeah. Who did the Thunder get that? Did they even draft that year?
So this was 20.
They were still good because they traded Paul George.
Yes.
This was SGA's first year.
Yeah. So they drafted Darius Baisley.
Okay. All right. Bays, big ups to Bays.
Yep.
So, oh yeah, but that was like what, the 17th, or was that in the 20s?
He was picked 23rd. They had the 21st pick, but they traded it to Memphis for a future second and the 23rd, and ended up. Yeah. Was this when the wheels really started turning? Like this was the beginning of this, right? So they actually drafted him with the intent of having the Westbrook team still. I mean, they didn't know that all this was coming until after the draft and closer to free agency.
And was this Westbrook saying like, I want out?
Yes, the sequence was.
Oh, well, I guess Paul George was the sequence, right?
Well, Russ wanted out first, and then Kawhi approached PG, and PG knew that Russ wanted to go. And so he was like, "Hey, you want to go to LA?" He's like, "Yeah, let's go."
Yeah. I mean, I always felt like he was going to end up in LA in one uniform or another.
Yeah, that was the scary thing when they traded for him. Was like, okay, we got 1 year. Like, let's.
That's
the metal. And then he ended up staying, which, I mean, obviously set up this era of Thunder basketball. I mean, just think of. I mean, he could have just gone to the Lakers and it just been.
But yeah, as a free agent, right?
Yeah, he was a free agent, and they had cap space, and they were going to get LeBron. You thought, oh man, they're going to get LeBron and PG, and the Thunder are going to be high and dry, and they're going to have to trade Westbrook, and then, they'll probably get something good for him still, but you're not getting SGA, that's for sure.
I mean, it's so wild. So, and I'll try and get back to the story, but also, mind you, Westbrook was also up for grabs. They're the two high-profile players in my fantasy draft that were up for grabs, so I had to choose between one of them. And I don't like missed free throws, so so I took Chris Paul, even thinking like I don't even think he's going to play. So it's my first season doing fantasy, so I'm watching every game. It's usually like I zone in on a team, and I'll usually pay most attention to that team that season. And so I'm watching these Thunder games thinking like he's not going to play. And it was just wild. He would just show out every fourth quarter. Like, and I'm like, what are you doing? They're trying to tank. The whole, everybody was saying, oh, they're trying to tank. And it's like him and Gallinari would just be like, no, we're not tanking. That's just not going to happen. And I'm looking at it and I'm seeing SGA and I'm like, this is as invaluable as it gets, because he's like, Chris Paul's not coming back.
Yeah. No
matter how good he is, it just doesn't seem like it's part of the plan.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely not. Yeah.
And I'm watching it during the bubble and I'm like, how far can this team go?
I know.
Because it just seemed like all bets were off. And also, like, if you look at that team on paper, that's a pretty great team. Dennis
Full-
Schroeder was fantastic coming off
He's
the
amazing.
bench.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, we still had Steve-O there. I mean, they were a legitimately good team. There were people that I talked to that thought the Thunder would beat the Rockets in round one.
I mean, in retrospect, like if you put those two teams against each other today, well, I guess Gallo's kind of messed up, but yeah, those like that
But
team that
and even CP. I mean, CP's starting to get back a little bit.
yeah. Well, by the way, he's still on my fantasy team.
He is.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
I won the league the next year.
You did.
Not bragging. And so, of course, what I did was I traded everybody after that. And I wanted to start over. So the first thing I did was traded all my players to get SGA. And I drafted Giddey. And I was like, and then sometime, so I was in, like fully in on the Thunder at that point. I started to be in on the season before that because SGA was just so much, the post Chris Paul year, he's just so much fun to watch.
Yeah.
Easily, I mean, I like Boris Chow, some of the things that he did were amazing in retrospect, but SGA kind of has that same just weird flair for just being incredible at something that you can't really like. I guess you can point your finger at it, but I was watching those Chris Paul years and just seeing the ease that he would get to the hoop in kind of slow motion.
Yeah.
It's so fun to watch as a fan of basketball. It's just crazy.
There's just nobody really like him, and especially if you're a Thunder observer, I mean, we saw the opposite of him for so many years.
Yeah.
In a good way,
no, of course,
not being bad, like just a guy that just was going to force his way there, and you just aren't as fast and you aren't as strong as him.
Right.
Like, good luck. And now it's like he really does hit like the slow motion button where he just creates like this tiny bit of separation and then just jets into that window. And it's just like, I don't know how he does it.
He slithers everywhere.
Yeah.
It's wild. And that's the only way to describe it is he like slithers to where he needs to go. I've been taking adult basketball lessons, which has been like the greatest thing ever. I've been seeing like a trainer.
Yeah.
This is all part of my retirement plan.
Yeah.
And I've learned all those moves, but you can't, doesn't matter how many times you can like do them on your own.
Yeah.
To do them the way that he does. And now people planning for that. I was listening to like, they were mic'd up. Someone was mic'd up and they were like, he's going to hit you with a second move. He always hits you with a second move. That's always going to happen. And they were planning for it. And it's like, doesn't matter.
You can't plan for it. Yeah.
You can't plan for it. Like, so it's especially now, like learning all these different dribble moves and stuff. And then just seeing him and being like, oh, he's operating on just another plane of existence, the same way that even Giddey passes the ball. So it's such a fun, it's a fun team to get behind. And again, like then you put the personalities together and the small market, and it's got me written all over it. It's just like, it's so perfect for me as a fan of basketball and rooting for someone like on like coming up. It's just, it's just so great. Oh, by the way, I last year I traded SGA at the deadline because at that point he was injured and all he was doing was shooting step back threes.
Yeah.
Remember, I mean, I won't put you on the spot, but there was a point last year where like the first half of the year, all he did was just, his only move was like a really awful step back three.
He was chucking. It felt like this a little bit this year too, but it's just turned out to be extremely positive. It just feels like he's in the lab a little bit out there, just being like, what can I do? Like, let me focus on my 3-point shot. Let's see what I can do. Cause he shot so well the year before.
Yeah. He was amazing.
That you're just thinking like, oh wow. And then he shoots terribly, honestly, for long stretches of that season. And he just took highly contested shots. I remember talking to Mark Degnalt about it, and he was like, now if you cut out all the contested threes that he's taking, like he's still shooting like 36% from three. He said, but
Right.
like he's taking a lot of bad ones.
Oh gosh, he was taking. All he did was take. It was hard to watch because I'm like, this is my favorite player. Has he lost a step? Like,
Yeah.
And this shot isn't even. It's not even a good shot.
Yeah.
Like you can't even be like, darn, he missed a tough one.
Yeah, he shot 30%.
Yeah, it was.
Pretty
Oh,
late.
it was awful. So I jumped ship on him, but was all in on Giddy. And then sure enough, like right after I trade SGA, like he at the end of last season, he exploded. And then you were at that point, I realized like, oh, he hasn't regressed. Like he's as good as ever, and he's only going to get better.
Mhm.
And then that's kind of been his trajectory ever since. So apologies, SGA. I tried to trade everything that I had to get you back, but it didn't happen.
So how much into the draft are you itself? Like how closely are you following it as like a Thunder fan?
This year Thunder draft, like insane.
Yeah.
I mean, scouted everybody, like everybody, mocked up everything.
Yeah.
I was.
So what were your thoughts on draft night? As guys,
it was kind of bittersweet. Because Jabari, even still to this day, I still think is. I wish that the Thunder had him. He's just like he's still perfect for that team, and I'm not saying Chet's not.
Yeah,
the both of them are perfect for the team.
Yeah,
I just kind of wanted the guy who I thought kind of filled a glaring hole, I guess. But I mean, Jabari's playing awful, but that's not his fault.
No, it's definitely not. I think there is something to that if Jabari was here and he's just shooting wide open threes that are generated by Shea and Giddey, that he'd be shooting probably mid 40s from three.
He would be his college self, but with like even so much less of a burden. In Houston right now, he has a burden to show out that he's good because he's just kind of stuck waiting until someone kind of hands him the ball, sometimes at the end of the shot clock. And he's got to just like throw it up, or he's just we're talking about SGA trying to find himself. He's just trying to find himself and his rhythm within what could possibly be the worst backcourt I think that I've ever seen for like team basketball.
So brutal, man. And
I've had to stop watching because I'm a Jabari fan and like I said, I traded everything. So I got Jabari, I got Chet. So and I was so in on this draft. I just really liked. I didn't like Banchero. I loved Chet, loved Jabari, and so I was like, oh great, like the Banchero's gone. Like this is amazing.
Yeah.
We can get Jabari. Like, or I'm thinking like, we got all these picks. Sam, do everything you can in the power to get Jabari and Chet. Think about that.
Guys. Yeah.
Like,
that would be crazy.
How phenomenal that team would be, because it would be, I mean, they're still playing from, it's such a great, the Thunder are such a great team. And I don't know who it is. I don't know who to give credit to, but it feels like Dagnall does such a good job of just teaching these, like having these guys play such a fun style of basketball that's so unselfish.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a huge thing because Mark is able to do two things really well. He connects with the players really well, and then he is able to show them what he wants them to do on the court. And some of it is to the guys that Presti has taken fit the way they want to play. It's like you have to be able to make a decision with the ball. The ball hits your hands. It's not thinking. It's just flow. Like hop into the flow of this team. And you can tell when guys aren't. Like you can tell like Trey Mann has been out of it recently.
It's tough. Yeah.
He's not flowing. Like Baisley has always kind of struggled to flow offensively with the team.
Yep.
And it really is. And this is something Presti said was like, it's not patterns, it's rhythm. Like hop into the rhythm. Like you're playing a song. Like we're all playing the same song together. And if you're not playing it, it's going to be glaringly obvious.
Yeah. And I mean, and you see it, you saw the kind of battle between SGA and Giddey. I thought they played pretty well together last year, but at the beginning of this year, it was pretty bad.
Mm-hmm.
and I thought SGA was just masterful regardless. And sometimes he doesn't play within the flow of the offense, but it's just like someone needs to not, and it needs to be him. You saw even in that last game when they barely inched it out. It's like you kind of just wish in those situations that you kind of do just give him the ball and everybody kind of find a way to proactively work around him. And then you see there's the other times when they are playing that kind of team ball. I feel like Dagnall's really done such a great job with the rotations as of late.
Yeah.
He's really figured out how to stagger those two to where when they're on the court together, they're making the most of it. And then when each of them are on the court separately, they're making the most of what they do best.
Yeah, no, I agree. I really liked, and he kind of went away from it the last couple games, but when you would have Giddey and J-Dub starting the fourth quarter together, it's like, oh, like this is something. And I feel like they've kind of like, okay, we know that works. Now let's try something else.
Yeah. And which I think that they can and they should. And, it's like SGA with that step back jumper. He hasn't really been taking them that much this year, but he had to figure out that that's not the way.
Yeah.
It's fucking crazy how, sorry, I shouldn't cuss. It's crazy how efficient he is. It's insane.
It is. Yeah. Especially the Synergy put out this shot quality stat this year. And it's not crazy to think like his shot quality would be bad. And like every superstars is bad, but you just compare it to like he or even Giddey. And it's like, oh my gosh, like the degree of difficulty on almost every shot that he takes is unbelievable.
But they're not I don't even think they're bad shots.
No, because he just finds a way.
Yeah.
He finds a way. There's been several 1-on-3 fast breaks where he's just pushing and he just finds these little seams within the defense. And they're all just kind of looking around at each other like, was that you? No, that was you. No, that was you. Like, who is that supposed to be?
I mean, they build a wall and he weirdly finds a way to like, those times when he ends up dunking, you're like, wait, where did you come from? Like there were just three guys right in front of you.
Yeah.
And then I see you like putting your hand through the hoop. Like, how did that happen?
It's happened so many times where I usually sit next to Joe Masato, who writes for the Oklahoman, and I just like will look over at him and just be like, I don't even know what to say. I don't know how he plays like this. Let's talk about some other players on the team. Just give me your general thoughts.
Absolutely.
Talked a lot about Shea. Tell me what you've seen from Giddey this season.
I thought I love Giddey. I love Giddey as much as I love Shea. Just because like the Boris Jow thing, I just love guys who like pass. That's always my favorite. My favorite part about basketball is passing for sure. So how am I not going to love him?
Yeah.
But I thought I don't know. I thought rolling into Summer League, I loved that they were playing together. I loved the team vibe. So I was already worried about how it was going to go into the season because it felt like you had like this kind of B squad and then you had the older guys. And it's like, I saw them doing runs together in the summer and I was like, how is this going to work? I thought that they would figure it out because they were pretty dominant, I think, in preseason, weren't they?
Yeah, they were good. Yeah, they were good to start the preseason. You started to feel if you were picking them to win like 20 games, you were starting to question yourself already.
I don't think I ever was picking them to win 20 games. I thought that was a matter of whether they would actively decide to tank or not.
Sure.
I just think that what they do, you even saw it last year. It's just like what they do, the style of basketball that they play. And we're really seeing it now, which is just so exciting. But you saw the glimpses where you're like, oh, well, they're going to run, even they're not going to run out like a traditional center now that Chet's out and stuff like that. And that's good because they're going to find a way to win. And not that I thought that Chet was ever like a traditional center to begin with. He's a great piece of that whole entire thing. But Giddey at the beginning of the season obviously was shooting bad. And then I think that he just I think he takes a lot from people. Like I never realized until I got onto Twitter that how awful NBA Twitter is. And it's particularly awful to him.
Yeah.
Which I guess is kind of fine, but I felt bad. So when Dagnall would start benching him, it was wild seeing his body language was when he gets benched, it's crazy. Yeah, like his body language is awful.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of a good thing.
He's
Because it just shows
outrageously competitive. Yeah.
Yeah. So it just shows how, and then so when he's out there, you saw he was forcing a lot of bad passes. And so I'm thinking like, okay, well then they're defending him differently, but he's so smart that he's going to figure it out. And I didn't think his shot would be part of him figuring it out, but somehow it's chugging along nicely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think they've figured it out. And I think he takes a lot of flack for his defense, but I actually think he's a smart team defender.
Yeah. Yeah. No, he knows where to be, and he's gonna hustle to get there. It's definitely the way that he's played. There's some times that he can get a little bit lost off ball, but that's just also just being young.
Yeah, it feels like all those guys get kind of lost off ball.
Yeah. Yeah. Being 20 years old, and you're playing against these guys that have been in the league for a decade. They know tricks that you don't know yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And it doesn't matter how much, how much he sees. It's just like, you can't see everything. He does. I watched, there was in that last game, towards the end of the game, he was down on the baseline left side, and someone just snuck past. I think Brown or whatever snuck past him.
Yeah, Christian
Brown. And it was like, how are you gonna you're gonna let that guy just sneak past you? But in general, that team just hustles on D. So I'm not mad. But so Giddey, I think he looks pretty great now. I think that his shot is only going to continue to get better.
Yeah.
And those weird floater type of shots that he was hitting all summer, when I would watch all of his workout videos and all that type of stuff, they've started to fall because they weren't falling, and it was okay, does this guy maybe have because Poku's touch is suspect around the rim, and so I'm like, does this guy kind of have a little bit of that suspect touch around the rim? And I think he does, and he doesn't. Yeah. Rubio, you'd be like, how does this guy throw these passes but can't throw the ball into the hoop? He can hit your hands perfectly, but he can't. But so I was worried about a little bit that maybe Giddey had a little bit of that, but I don't think he does. I really don't think he does, and I think he works too hard. That I don't see how he's not. And the two of them have figured it out, and it's just made the season pretty spectacular.
It's kind of wild how quickly they have figured it out, because I agree, there were parts at the beginning of the season where you're like, okay, this is going to be a process. This is going to take some time. And then around the middle of December, it just started to click, and it was pretty crazy. And the shooting stuff has improved so much from last year with Josh. I mean, he shot 41% from the field last year.
Oh yeah.
He's up to almost 49%, which is very respectable. And then he's up almost 6 percentage points, or more than 6 percentage points from three. And man, it's more than you could ask for, honestly, realistically, from him as a shooter.
Yeah. And I don't think people have realistic expectations for him because the way he passes, you just assume that he's just going to be that good at anything that isn't physically, that you can't physically outdo with someone. And the crazy thing about Josh is that he's huge, and he's got a weird speed burst that you just don't, that guys aren't, the teams are not preparing for. He's blowing past people a lot.
And he's getting really strong, which will continue to be a thing. I mean, you watch him now, he's 20. I mean, think about Josh at 25 when he's actually put on real muscle. I mean, it's fun to watch him bully Nick Claxton now, but he's gonna be a force.
Oh, he's gonna be an absolute force. He's gonna be an absolute force. And like I said, I'm so glad that they figured out how to play together. It seems like they like playing with each other now.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no question.
Because those two, everybody was wondering how it was gonna work, and I don't know. I think I had faith in Dagnall, who, by the way, when I first saw him, I was I thought that he was just a tech guy version of an NBA coach. You know what I'm talking about? He just seemed like he was a Silicon Valley. I'm okay, this guy's he's gonna use a whole bunch of words, and there's gonna be like some analytic stuff, and
Uh-huh.
he does seem like slightly off as a human being when you see him in his interviews, and he's constantly squinting his eyes, and the way he walks up the court, and all this type of stuff. And I was like, this guy's like is a total like smokescreen. Like none of this is real, and he doesn't see. Is he that analytic driven, or is he really like he doesn't strike me as analytic driven as I thought he was early on.
He's not. He leans on their analytics staff a lot, and trusts them, and will listen. He's just, I'm honestly, like, whenever I talk about Mark, I wish I could be friends with him. I wish the Thunder would let me be friends with him, because he's just a really cool dude.
Yep.
He's just a normal guy.
Yep.
And I want someday, I want to be able to interview him on this show and like tell his story, because his story is just outrageous, because he basically went from being a college professor one day to being the head coach of the Blue the next day, and then worked his way up to being one of 30 head coaches in the NBA, when he's one of the more unlikely NBA coaches maybe ever.
Yeah, I mean, that's why it was so weird. I was like, where are they plucking this guy from? Was he grown in like a lab? Like, he's just seemed. I like
Donovan connection. It was just like this like obsession with Billy Donovan that like led the Thunder back to Florida like over and over again. And like then there's this dude, Mark Daigneault, who's like on the staff, but like who is this guy? And obviously they formed a good relationship, and that's the kind of the thing too with being an NBA coach today. It is like way more relationally driven than it ever has been.
Yeah.
If you don't relate to the players, you're not going to make it. That's why like Tibbs is just like Tibbs probably won't get another job after he loses his job with the Knicks.
No, of course
just
not.
Because it's not like that time is done. And if you don't relate to the players, you have no staying power at all.
Yeah, I was watching like a lot of Portland games, and they were winning early on in the year, and I was like, oh, like I thought Chauncey was a bad coach, and then I thought he was a good coach, and now I just think that he does like. I'm like, you know what? I don't think he's necessarily the problem in Portland. Like, I actually think he's a pretty good coach, and I think that the players play for him, and that was one of the first times where I was like, oh yeah, like it helps to just relate to these guys, because you listen to interviews and athletes. It's weird that I'm expecting them to answer questions more based off of details, and usually they talk more based on like feeling and emotion and stuff like that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it is a different generation of player, and it's honestly pretty fun to cover. It's really interesting to follow these guys. Okay, give me thoughts on anybody else. Like, who outside of Gideon Shea, like who's the guy that you're like, okay, I like to watch this guy?
I mean, obviously the two there's three rookies. But I love. I'm gonna go with a weird one. I love Kenny Hustle, man.
Oh, that's my guy. That's my
guy. Okay, so this was a question that I was going to ask you.
Okay.
In 2 years, who are the 8 players that are still going to be here?
That are still on the team. Shea, Giddy, J-Dub, Kenrich, I think, is a part of that. Chet. I still think that they'll get a decently high pick in this next draft, and I have to just believe that guy will be there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's 6. And now you're just like, probably Dort is still here.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, I'm a believer in Ousmane Dieng. I just think that his skill set and his size are just so unique. And
we've talked about it. I love Oos.
If it
hated
works,
the pick.
I did too, man. That the night
I know you did.
When the Knicks took him, And then when I found out the Thunder, I was like, oh.
Those are my thoughts too, especially because because I'd listened to you do like a lot of draft stuff,
Yeah.
and we're talking about AJ Griffin, even just getting like a big, like a functional rim runner, it's like stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Like Jalen Duren, if you were available.
Yeah, Jalen Duren.
Yeah.
And I think that's I couldn't remember if you were hot or cold on him. I liked him because I also thought he could pass a little bit too. But then they choose Jang, and that was the player that I absolutely did not want them to choose.
Yeah. I didn't either, because I just didn't. He had such a weird season with the Breakers that you're just like, I don't know what to believe about him,
Right.
because he played so poorly, and then he played great, and but it was only like 6 or 7 games.
Yeah.
And you're just like, I don't know what this is. And then you do all these pre-draft interviews, and honestly, I take way too much from those. I take way too much
from the players doing pre-draft interviews.
From the interviews, yeah.
From the players talking.
Mm-hmm. So
what do you take from it?
I just value personality so much. I just think that kind of stuff is probably a little underrated in ways. And like J-Dub was easily my favorite interview.
Mm-hmm. He
was amazing. And then you talk to Usman Jang, and it is like talking to a cardboard box.
Yeah,
man, this is not great. And but then there's also like the language barrier stuff with him, and he's crazy young. And so like I had to like really think about like how to like analyze that portion of it, because it was just really bad. Honestly, it was just
right.
really, really bad. And then I don't know what to do with the Breakers thing. But then I talked to a lot of people that cover the draft and watched him a lot. And they're like, listen, like you got to give this guy a chance because X, Y, and Z, or there's literally no one physically like this guy in this draft.
Yeah.
And if he figures it out, he's going to be really good. Like Mike Schmitz, who works for the Blazers now, was just.
Oh, was Mike Schmitz, was he high on him?
So I talked to Mike at Summer League, and he was like, oh, he's like, you guys got Usman Jang.
By the way, Shaden Sharp's my guy.
Oh, dude, I remember all the Shaden Sharp rumors to the Thunder. Like I was praying, but also at the same time I was like, well, that doesn't make sense. Like it doesn't make. But then they went and got J-Dub. Yeah.
But I actually the
how did you come around on Jang? Like, what was your?
Well, so I was absolutely with you, and I'm thinking like, okay, we're just like, there was a part of me that still believed that Poku would turn it on, which I'm not saying that he hasn't. Okay.
Yeah.
But it seemed a little redundant. It was like, okay, we're just like stacking up these guys. And I guess one thing I want to talk about, and we'll just digress very quickly, is the cannibalization that's going on within the squad is definitely worries me, especially when we talk about emotions on these players.
Sure.
And that's what I saw with Giddey early on in the year, and I see it with Trey Mann now, who I think he's a really great player. I love everybody on the team. And to say that, I really do. I have something positive to say about all of them as players, and so it's really hard. And usually, if I'm a fan of a team, there's like 3 people that I'm like zeroing in on, being like, "You're the problem."
Yeah.
You know, and with this team, I don't think that. There are a bunch of young kids who all were taken by someone or by a group of people who seem to know basketball and have like a pretty nice vision. So I trust that. And then I see Trey like struggling, and I see like, it just seems like, there's nice inter competition. And then it seems like a lot of these guys I don't know. I think I'm pretty mentally strong, but I can't, that would do kind of a number on me too. Trying to figure out where I fit. And if I don't like figure it out now, I'm not saying I don't know. It's hard to describe, but it seems like a tough thing for the young team. I feel like that's their biggest challenge right now, is trying to figure out who's sticking and how everybody fits, and I like we're seeing them win because they're starting to figure that out.
Yeah.
Dagnall's still trying to find a way to give man minutes, trying to give Bays minutes. It's just even. I mean, it seems like it's even for them. But yeah, eventually the writing's going to be on the wall about who fits within the team. Like Isaiah Joe just shows up out of nowhere and is the shooter that they needed. Is the guy that you want taking those shots. Like, Trey gets hot, but Joe is just like steadily just right there, and he played some great defense the last game too.
Yeah. He's got more juice than I thought he did, honestly. I watched him with the Sixers some, and he didn't get – that's a veteran team. They don't have time to develop Isaiah Joe or to just give him token minutes. But, yeah, he's definitely blown expectations out of the water for everybody. And yeah, what you're describing is definitely a thing, and it's going to intensify. Like, it's going to ratchet up. Like, next year, they're going to add a first-round pick that's going to matter and Chet. Well – the minutes that are going to Jay Will right now, man, like you're either going to have to get way better or you're going to play for the blue.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing is that, like, I guess, you can say the Thunder have drafted guys who do something, like, who have a specialty, like drawing charges.
Yeah.
Or in Trey Mann's case, taking like getting insane separation on a step back jumper.
Yeah.
But then you've got all these Swiss Army knives.
Yep.
And not saying that, I mean, and Jay Will is actually a really good passer too, but it's not, I don't know. I root for everybody.
Yeah. He's got a ways to go.
Yeah.
It's going to be, they haven't had to make any tough decisions yet with the roster. And tough decisions are on the way. In the next 2 years, they're going to have to make some really difficult decisions. I'm
worried about. That's why I'm like, what do you do when I'm asking you who the top 8 are?
Yeah.
In my dreams, I'm seeing an SGA, Giddey, J-Dub, Jang, Holmgren.
Oh man!
Like just based on potential, like starting 5, and I'm thinking like this is insane. But what about next year when I'm sure they're going to grab? I would assume that we're done with wings and
I would not assume that,
and point guards. I know, and that's the problem.
I would not assume that.
That's like the issue. But how do you get better than you got? I feel like you've got Dort and you've got J-Dub kind of. One of them's going to have to get that spot in the long run. And I guess, J-Dub
off the bench. Yeah.
J-Dub is probably pretty great off the bench is the other thing, but he seems like he just seems like he's too good to come off the bench.
I agree. I think Dort might be the one that gets put to the bench at some point,
but he doesn't seem like is like an ideal off the bench guy. So it's just that's an interesting conundrum I'm saying between the two of them.
It is. And it's kind of cool though, that we get to see this example in Boston though, with the way that Marcus Smart came off the bench for that Celtics team that ended up going to the finals. Like there's a blueprint, and Dort's definitely not the passer that Marcus is, but they play a very similar role where it's just like go in and like create havoc and go get your shots up.
That defensive play was wild. And some, what weirdly is Lou Dort was the odd man out for me for a while. And it wasn't until they started playing these really good basketball, like this really good basketball, that it's just like, even though he takes these threes where you're like, what is he? But he's confident in it, and they seem to go in.
Yeah.
You're always like, that defender's way too close for you to be taking that 3. And it just causes him to shoot it even higher. And
dude, I know that was like my thing with him in the draft was at Arizona State, the ball would just go out of the sight of the camera at times and just like appear back in. You're like, oh my gosh, how is this
he needs that defender in his face in order to get that arc.
It's so funny. I love Lou though. Like I think that guy's great.
Yeah, I'm now at the point where it's like, well, he fills a need. He's the one guy on the team other than SGA where I'm like, okay, and maybe don't be selfish. Sometimes he takes those reckless drives, but he's doing things that the other guys on the team aren't necessarily doing.
Yeah, he just plays with so much force, just all the time, and just can't stop. And
Oh, when he locked down Jamal at the end of that was insane.
That was so much fun.
No foul, like not even. There was nothing questionable.
Yeah.
He straight up bodied him up.
Yep. Got him with the chest first. And then when Jamal went up, he was to the side of him and he's just like waving his arm. I showed that to my son. My son's 10 years old and he's like super into hoops. And he was asleep for that game. And when he got up the next morning, I was like, dude, you got to see this. Like, just watch Dort. Like, watch the way that he slides, watch his chest, and then watch his contests. Like, just there's not many guys that can do this. Like, this is the kind of stuff that we need to be like aiming for. Like,
and while he was playing defense, he was also like, while Jamal Murray was taking the shot, his body was in such perfect position that he could basically like show the refs, like, look, I'm not fouling. Like, it was insane. It was insane because Jamal Murray's going straight up and Lou's going kind of straight up.
Yep.
And not touching him, and also like making the shot impossible.
Yeah. I love Dort.
I can't believe I'm talking about Dort. Like, he's the last person I wanted to talk about. But like,
anybody else you want to talk about
so Oos I love. I just want to get that out of the way.
Yeah.
I love Oos. Oh wait, you got to finish your 8 who are going to be here. And then we can call it.
Shea, Giddey, J-Dub, Kenrich is going to be on this team for sure. Shams was saying it yesterday, and it's something that I've been saying for a long time. Chet, obviously. And then I said, this next year's pick, whoever that is.
Then you said Dort.
And then Jang.
That's 8. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense, but I mean, I'm still trying to figure out what they do with that. Okay, this is the last thing, and then we'll get out of here. It's been a very long time. I love it though, because it's not like I know anyone who wants to talk about this.
This has been fun. No, I don't want to stop either. This has been great.
We'll keep it going for just the last thing.
Yeah.
So they've got all this draft capital.
Yeah.
I was hoping like maybe like a couple of years ago that they would make a move for like someone like John Collins or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Now they've got even more capital, more assets, players that they could probably trade, along with that.
Mm-hmm.
Even say Lou Dort, and they can chase someone big.
Mm-hmm.
What's the point? I don't think there's a point in chasing anyone big. Is Sam Presti thinking about throwing a superstar or someone on the cusp or something like that into the mix?
I don't think that's on the radar today.
So then what do you do with all these draft picks?
I think you first have to figure out what you have. And I think that's the thing I think that will happen over the rest of this year and next season. It's like, what do we have? And the good thing is they only have one pick in this next draft that's going to convey. It'll be their own.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll have up to 4 first rounders in 2024. And that's when I think you'll have a better idea of what you're looking at. And you can either, and Sam has proven that he'll do this, he'll kick the can down the road. He did this with picks the last time around, where he's just like, okay, we're not ready. We're not really ready to make a decision yet. Let's try to find here. We'll give you this year's pick if you give us a lottery protected or top 10 protected pick in 2028,
right?
Whatever. And so I think he has options there, and I think we'll just know more after next season, after you get to see Chet with these guys,
mm-hmm.
after you get to see Jang play like a full season, hopefully. I think you'll have a better idea of what you need. And then, I mean, there's a chance that this team is actually really good next year.
I mean, are they not? Will they not try and make the play in this year?
I think they will. I think we're finally seeing games of consequence. Like, I think that Denver game, that's the phrase is that Presti says, like, if we're playing games of consequence, we're just going to let it ride. And I think that we're starting to see those games. I mean, they're at 500, just about. They're one game under 500.
Mm-hmm.
They're within play-in range. I think that you let this play out. And it could play out that they just don't make it because the teams make moves. Like the Blazers somehow stop playing like garbage and things just click for guys. Or the Lakers make a deal, they get Bogdanovich as well, and AD comes back and they take off. Like there's so many things outside of the Thunder's control that could happen that could lead to them not making the play-in. And so the good thing about that is like this season, like if they make the play-in, that's awesome. Like great experience for this team. If they don't, great. You get a little bit better draft pick and get to choose a guy that you like a little bit more because you're a few spots higher. So I think you're just kind of playing with house money at this point.
Yeah, which is, I mean, kind of what I figure. But I weirdly think, barring any crazy like injury or just not trying to make the play in, I find it so hard to see. Like it's just a weird competitive group. Like we talk about Kenrich Williams, and it's just like he's so much. He's older than these guys, and his like level of improvement is just amazing.
He would even that's one of my favorite things is sit down with Kenrich at the beginning of the season and just talk to him about like, can you believe you're here? Like, can you believe you're doing this? And he's just like, man, I honestly can't. Like, I can't believe that this is happening.
Why? Like, he's not even like Kenny Hustle anymore. He's just like Kenny, like the guy. Like, I trust him.
He's 53% from the field this year.
Yeah,
I think that's
I trust him with the ball. When he takes like his mid range shot, I'm like, okay, that thing's going in.
I know. His passing the other night against the Pacers.
Yeah, what 11 assists?
Like, yeah, I mean, it was like I didn't know he was capable of.
He threw the Denver game too. He threw some great like timely passes.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell like he's not done developing either. Like he has soaked up so much over the past 2 years from this team.
This guy's what, 28?
Yeah, he's 28. It's
insane. It's insane. It's like that's why I love him. Is just I loved him 2 years ago. And just seeing how much he just gets better.
Yeah.
At like discernible like skills. He's not just like, it's not like he's getting better. His shot is falling.
Right. No,
like,
you're right. He's such a useful player.
He's so useful. It's crazy. And he sees, I mean, when you have these guys like SGA and Giddey, who are also operating, and even J Will sometimes, or J Dub, like are operating on like just a higher plane of seeing things. Like it's nice to have that third person. And I think Chet kind of has that, a little bit of that mojo too. So I'm excited to see that.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy how some of this stuff has fallen into their laps. Because like Kenrich was just a throw-in in that Steven Adams deal. And it turns out, you're just the kind of player that we want.
Yeah.
Shoot past dribble, plays hard on defense. Like great. Like you fit
This is the Boris Jow cast, but that's what Boris Jow was when the Suns traded, like when they had to give Joe Johnson like a sign and trade. Boris came and I remember reading like Hollinger like trashing him.
Yeah.
As just not being a basketball player, basically. And then sure enough, like he's an unbelievable, just like, I love those Swiss Army knife type of guys that can just do weird stuff. And the Thunder is just full of them.
Yeah, that's the goal. And they're going to try to get another one. That's why when you look at the 23 draft, you can already start to like figure out like, okay, this guy's a Thunder guy and that guy's not. Like the Thompson twins, Thunder players. Like Cam Whitmore, not a Thunder player.
I'm not paying attention to this draft. I swear to God, because I traded for. I've got 4 Thunder players on my squad right now, and I'm like, you know what? Like I and Jabari and Shaden, like. I spent way too much time paying attention. I fell in love with every player from the last draft. And so I was like, I'm not going to do this again. And then, and Thunder speaking wise, it's just like, I'm just going to trust what Presti does. And
yeah, you can't, cause there's some juice in this draft.
Is there really?
Yeah.
Really
good players. Or
is it just that there's such a irrefutable number one that everybody thinks then that the class is stacked?
No, man, the Thompson twins are super fun.
Yeah, but they can't like that shot.
They can't shoot. No, but there's just so much else, man. There's just so much else to love. Keontae George out of Baylor is I
don't
think
know.
that guy is super fun. And then this guard Anthony Black, he's 6'7". He's just got like
Yeah,
thunder
he's
all over him.
wait, is he the guy with like the big the
He's got
yeah,
big hair.
he's a trip, man.
Yeah.
He's what all the players are gonna like. A lot of players are gonna start playing like post Thunder. Like that's a. It's almost like they're everybody talks about that, like how the Raptors have these crazy long, like all this length and all this type of stuff, and Orlando's building like a stretch squad.
Yeah.
But the Thunder are building this like everybody can pass and will pass.
Yeah. That's Anthony Black. The shooting stuff is bad. And so like that makes me wonder. I just would be curious what they think. Like, what do you guys think of the evaluation? If I were to, and I won't know that, but I'm very curious to see what the Thunder would think about that. Because if it's fixable, like they saw Giddey and they're like, we can fix this. Like this will work eventually. And I don't know what their thoughts are on Anthony Black's shot. And if they think it can work, he's a great rebounder for a guard. He can really pass. He's a defensive just nightmare. He's like almost 2 steals per game. Like he's so much fun. And
he looks great, but it's like, but once again, it's like he'd be cannibal. Like it seems redundant at this point.
It is. Eventually it's just going to be the Spider-Man meme everywhere on this Thunder team.
Yeah, for sure. All right. I have one last question.
Okay.
I can't remember it, so we're good.
Nate Ruess, go listen on Spotify.
I'm all right. They don't need to go listen.
Yes, go listen.
Don't do it.
It's very, very good.
Don't do it.
Everything that you've done, the format, fun. Go look up Nate Ruess's solo album too. It's very, very, very good. Thanks for joining. This was great. I've been looking forward to this. We connected. What was it, like 2.5 weeks ago?
Yeah.
I've been looking forward to this since then. So appreciate you, man.
Oh, this is so much fun. Thank you, Andrew, for having me.